The gavel slammed down and echoed through the vast wooden courtroom like thunder trapped inside cathedral walls. People in the gallery leaned forward, breaths caught in their throats, eyes darting between the woman on the witness stand and the man sitting in the shadows of the defense table. Light from the high-arched windows streamed in, dust particles swirling in golden shafts that illuminated the tension on every face. Reporters clutched cameras like weapons, waiting for the moment that would define the scandal. Elena pressed her hand protectively against the swell of her belly. Her fingers trembled, though she willed them still. Her pregnancy, once a secret dream of joy, now sat like evidence against her in a courtroom that questioned her very dignity. She raised her eyes to the judge, lips parting to speak, but no sound came. Her voice, her truth, her entire being was being suffocated under the weight of accusation. They called her a liar. They claimed her baby was not Alexander's. They painted her as a woman scheming for wealth, desperate for a piece of the empire her ex-husband had built. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. The prosecutor's words were sharp, slicing into her composure like knives. "Tell us, Mrs. Crown," he demanded, voice laced with contempt, "if you expect us to believe this child belongs to a man who has already moved on. Or is it simply convenient to tie his fortune to your unborn child?" The room buzzed with whispers, gasps, a low rumble of judgment. Elena's vision blurred. She wanted to scream, to fight, to shout that this baby was conceived in love, in moments of tenderness before their marriage fractured. But fear paralyzed her. Her heart pounded so loud it drowned her thoughts. Her lips trembled, and the silence she offered seemed to confirm their accusations. Then came the sound. A chair scraped harshly against the polished floor. Heads turned sharply, like a ripple in still water. Alexander Crown rose to his feet. He towered in his tailored navy suit, every inch the billionaire tycoon the world both envied and feared. His jaw was clenched, his hand steady on the table as his gray eyes blazed with something rawer, truer, than boardroom steel. For a moment, the room itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. And then his voice rang out, deep, unwavering, carrying through every corner of the chamber. "That's my baby." It wasn't just a statement. It was a declaration, a thunderclap of truth that shattered the suffocating lies circling Elena. Gasps erupted, the gallery broke into chaos, the judge's gavel pounded for silence, but nothing could unring those words. Elena's heart stopped, then surged with a rush of warmth and confusion that made her tears spill freely down her cheeks. For the first time in months, Alexander's eyes were locked on hers, not with indifference or distance, but with a fire that once had made her believe love could conquer everything. The story of how they had reached this moment stretched back to nights of laughter and mornings of promises. Elena had once been his world. They had fallen in love in the unlikeliest of places, a charity event where she had been volunteering, hair damp from rain, carrying boxes of donations in her arms. He had been the guest of honor, the youngest billionaire in the city, untouchable. Yet it wasn't her beauty that captured him, though she had that in abundance. It was the way she looked at him without awe, without calculation, but with the kind of grounded honesty he hadn't felt in years. Their love had been a whirlwind. Late-night walks through empty streets, champagne toasts on rooftops, whispered promises in the dark. But love is fragile against the storm of ambition. Alexander's empire demanded more and more of him, endless flights, relentless negotiations, days spent chasing numbers that never seemed enough. Elena pleaded for him to come back to her, to put down the phone, to remember that love is nourished by presence, not wealth. He always promised tomorrow. Tomorrow became a stranger who never arrived. When she discovered she was pregnant, Elena's heart surged with hope. She imagined the child would bring them closer, that Alexander would rediscover the man beneath the empire. But when she told him, his face did not light with joy. It darkened with fear. He muttered about timing, about deals, about how a baby now would complicate everything. Her heart cracked that night, and the cracks widened until they became chasms. The final shatter came at a glittering gala beneath chandeliers dripping with crystal. She saw him arrive with a woman in a crimson dress, statuesque, perfect, smiling with triumph as cameras flashed. The woman clung to Alexander's arm as though she belonged there. Elena's heart stopped, her humiliation immortalized in photographs splashed across every paper by morning. Without a word, she packed her bags, left the mansion, and signed the papers that ended their marriage. Alone, her belly grew in with it the whispers of society. They called her delusional, greedy, manipulative. By the time court summoned her, her spirit was frayed but not broken. She would endure, she would fight, or so she thought, until the crushing silence of that courtroom nearly destroyed her. And then Alexander's voice broke through, claiming the truth she had carried alone. The days that followed were brutal. The courtroom became a battlefield of words. The mistress in crimson was called to testify, smirking with painted lips. But under relentless questioning, her story unraveled. With trembling fingers, she confessed she had been paid by Alexander's rivals, planted at his side to orchestrate scandal. Photographs had been staged, rumors spread with precision to corrode his empire from within. Alexander had not betrayed Elena. He had been betrayed himself. The revelation cracked something inside Elena. For months, she had carried anger, pain, betrayal so heavy it nearly crushed her. And now she realized it had been a web spun by enemies. Yet the anger remained, turned toward him. Because he had not fought for her. He had let her go. He had let her believe she was unwanted. During a recess, she confronted him in the quiet hallway, her voice low, trembling but fierce. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you fight for me when everything was tearing me apart?" His reply was stripped of the armor he wore in boardrooms. "Because I thought you were safer without me. I thought if I let you go, you could escape the vultures that circle me. But I was wrong. I was a coward. I should have fought. For you. For us. For our baby." Her tears spilled silently, and for the first time in so long, his hand reached for hers. It was hesitant, shaking, but it was real. And she didn't pull away. When the verdict came, the lies were destroyed. The court ruled in Elena's favor, her dignity restored, her baby's future no longer shadowed by scandal. Cameras flashed as she stepped into the sunlight outside, but this time she was not alone. Alexander walked beside her, his hand steady on her back, shielding her not as a billionaire protecting his fortune but as a man reclaiming his family. Trust, however, is not born from verdicts. Forgiveness cannot be handed down like a ruling. On the courthouse steps, Alexander turned to her, eyes filled with vulnerability she had never seen before. "I don't deserve a second chance. But if you let me, I will spend every day of my life proving I can be the man you believed in." She looked at him, torn between the fury of the past and the fragile hope blooming in her chest. Then she took his hand and placed it against her belly. The baby kicked. Alexander's breath caught, and for the first time, she saw his eyes soften into something beyond power, beyond pride. She saw a father. The journey that followed was not easy. Trust had to be rebuilt, love had to be nurtured back from ashes. But he showed up, not with diamonds, not with promises of mansions or cars, but with presence. He was there at doctor's appointments, at sleepless nights when Elena cried from exhaustion, at quiet mornings where all he did was hold her hand and listen. Slowly, she began to see that beneath the mistakes, beneath the pride, there still lived the man who had once held her heart. The night their daughter was born, Elena's cries filled the sterile hospital room, sweat glistening on her forehead, pain tearing through her body. Alexander held her hand, whispering words of encouragement, his face pale with helplessness. When the baby's cries pierced the air, his tears fell freely. He held his daughter with trembling arms, whispering promises into her tiny ear, promises of love, of protection, of never choosing empire over family again. Elena watched him, her body weak but her heart full, and she knew in that moment that their story had not ended in betrayal. Theirs was not the kind of love story that stayed unbroken. It was the kind that broke, shattered, and somehow, against all odds, found its way back. Stronger, braver, unshakable. As Elena lay in that hospital bed, her newborn daughter against her chest and Alexander's hand entwined with hers, she realized that sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones without scars. They're the ones where scars become proof of survival, where pain becomes the fire that forges something unbreakable. This was not the ending. It was the beginning.